Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Ankit Sheth, scientist from ICMR National Institute of Occupational Health, which is the apex institute dealing with the research in the field of all occupational health and the health of healthy workforce. I'm delighted to share the findings of my research titled Assessment of Workplace Dust Exposure and Pulmonary Function Parameters Among Ceramic Tile Industry Workers. So before I begin the actual findings of the study, let me present some background, what I had before I started the study. So it was a well-known fact that exposure to respirable dust particles in the work environment was a potential risk factor for the development of respiratory diseases. And particularly researchers, few studies had also been conducted in the field of ceramic tile industries only, where they are shown that exposure to the dust particles in the ceramic tile industry poses a risk for the development of respiratory disease. But all of these studies were either Chinese or they were conducted in the European countries, mainly in the settings of Italy. Dust generated by these hot processes that are involved in the ceramic tile industries are particularly of micron size. This was also documented by one of the Italian studies. So with this background in mind, the research gap that I found was that none of the Indian studies had been conducted in the field of ceramic tile industry workers where pulmonary function parameters were evaluated. At the same time, there was no data regarding the respirable dust, that is PM4, particulate matter 4, as well as PM2.5 in Indian setting. On the other hand, there is an exponential growth of ceramic tile industry in Morbi, which is actually the second largest cluster of ceramic tile manufacturing in the entire world. And hence, I was I had an insight to study these pulmonary function parameters as well as these personal exposure to PM4 and PM2.5 in ceramic tile industry in this Morbi setting. The objectives of the study were to estimate the prevalence of abnormal pulmonary function test parameters as well as to measure the personal exposure to PM4 and PM2.5 among these workers. This was a cross-sectional study conducted in the ceramic tile industry in Morbi, Gujarat. The primary study population was obviously the workers in the ceramic tile industries, and as a comparator group, I also included the administrative workers who are usually working within the closed cabins but are also exposed to relatively lesser amount of dust because they were working in the same environment. Inclusion criteria were age more than 18 years and work X of more than 1 year. Several exclusion criteria are framed, particularly any respiratory, non-respiratory illness, which would interfere with the results of pulmonary function test, workers with past medical history of any chest injuries, positive familial history of allergy, acute respiratory infection in the last 4 weeks, and any other contraindications to perform spirometry. So this is just a pictogram of the key units of the ceramic tile industry to give you a brief idea of the processes that are involved. On the right hand side, you can see the actual process that is involved in the manufacturing of ceramic tile. First of all, raw material and ball milling unit is there. This raw material is then passed to the spray dryer section. It is then passed to the pressing section, then clean section in which up to 1200 degrees Celsius thermal heat is produced, and the next section is glazing and printing. After that, there is sizing, cutting and polishing of these tiles, and finally sorting and packaging. So we had put one personal dust sampler in each of these units, as well as we put one personal dust samplers on the worker of administrative units also. And we enrolled workers from all of these units, keeping in mind the representativeness of the entire ceramic tile unit. Brief about methodologies. We used a general questionnaire to capture the socio-demographic details, occupational history and medical history, and we also employed one respiratory symptom questionnaire which is developed by American Thoracic Society, which is a standardized respiratory symptom questionnaire. Pulmonary function tests were evaluated with the help of a portable calibrated Spirovit SP10 Schiller machine, and dust measurement were done using personal air sampler, PM4 and PM2.5 impact at the flow rate of 2 liter per minute. These are designed by the SKC USA, and 8-hour time weighted average values were considered in this study. So coming to the results, this is the brief profile of the subjects. We can see the mean age is 29 years and there is no difference almost between the admin as well as the supervisors or the workers group. This is the distribution of the workers that were working section-wise. So we can see we have a representative from almost all of the units. Except this spray dryer section. We were not able to enroll any subject from the spray dryer section, which was apparently the most dustful environment because there was only one worker and he refused to participate in the study. These are the level of personal exposure to the respirable dust and PM 2.5 levels. We can see the highest is in ball mill section and spray dryer section. Now, OSA USA has recommended personal exposure limit of 5 mg per cubic meter, 8-hour time weighted average values. But in this study, we can see in the spray dryer section, we are seeing results as 6 times higher. It is almost 30 mg per meter cube, these PM4 levels. Proportion of abnormal LFTs in admin section, we were not able to find any abnormal lung function test among any of the workers. However, 15% of the supervisors and 11% of the workers had abnormal lung function test spirometry. This is job profile vis-a-vis job duration. We can see supervisors and the workers have a relatively longer job duration in our study as compared to the admin workers. This is a graph showing job profile vis-a-vis FeV1 versus FVC ratio, which shows early compromise in the lung function. We can see a compromised in supervisor and worker group. You can see the values, mean average values of 78 and 81 as compared to the admin group, which had values as high as 90. So we were seeing compromised values in both supervisor and worker group. Forced vital capacity was also compromised in supervisor and worker group, rather more compromised in the supervisor group. We can see the values of 3.29 and 3.59 versus the value of 4.34 in the admin group. Forced expiratory flow rate middle quartile was also compromised, found to be compromised in supervisor and worker group as compared to the admin group. This study had some limitations. First of all, because the limited production was going on due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, and the raw material mostly comes from the Ukraine, so a reduced number of workers were there, and we were not able to enroll all the workers from all the units. Example I mentioned, I was not able to enroll from the spray dryer section. Workers were relatively young age population, and as well as they had a shorter duration of exposure in the ceramic tile industries. So this is an ongoing study. I am going to recruit more subjects from the different ceramic tile industries, and I think I will be able to get a better picture after the completion of the entire study. So this is the brief summary of this research and its significance, that the initial results, particularly regarding this measurement of dust, has given me the insight that this spray drying section can be studied more, as well as the printing involves nowadays 3D printing. And 3D printing is known to have a nanoparticle exposure. So research can also be directed towards this measurement of these nanoparticles. And as well as we can frame some tailored preventive strategies, particularly in the spray dryer section, which is having very high dust volume. That's all for my presentation. Thank you. I'm open to questions.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very disciplined, time-oriented approach. So we invite any question related to the topic. Well, this topic is, I believe, is real occupational health in India, very exposed, globally focused, and demand in our community. Any questions? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think very nicely. Just
Thank you.
one quick observation. So you observed lower mid-expecting flow, also FE1, FEC.
Yes.
Ratio, the supervisor.
Yes.
Compared to the workers.
Yes.
What do you think your explanation for that?
You mean to say this is more compromise in supervisor? Sir, see, workers were limited to the sections that they were working on. So the only workers what we perceived and also was our dust exposure suggests that ball milling and spray dryer section workers are exposed more to this dust. However, supervisors are not limited to any particular section. These supervisors are supervisors for entire section of this industry. So they are continuously moving to different sections. So this might be one of the reasons why supervisors are having more compromise, because this worker may be diluted. For example, the workers that are involved in the sorting and packaging and polishing are not exposed to higher amount of dust. So the data may be skewed or the data may be diluted because this data presents the average of all workers. However, the few supervisors are there, they are working continuously in all environments. So this may be one of the reasons in compromise. Yes, sir. Yes.
Normally what we see in factories, the supervisors, they those voyages after working for long
Exactly.
on
Yes.
on the shop
Yes.
floor.
Yes.
And for suggestion, as you expand your study, apart from the age profile,
Yes.
the numbers of years what is their work in particular area, that is also
Sir, there was one graph related to job duration, and in that graph also I reiterate your observation that the job duration, average job duration of the supervisor was higher as compared to the workers. So that may be the another reasons to explain the more compromise or higher compromise in the lung function. Thank you very much for your interest.